Good morning, everyone. Let's start the 9:30 meeting of the Long Island Committee. We have three public speakers. First is George Haikalis. George?
Could this be distributed to the board members? Good morning. My name is George Haikalis. I'm the president of the Institute for Rational Urban Mobility. IRM urges MTA to halt construction of its deep cavern plan and move quickly to construct the upper-level loop alternative developed by the Delcan Corporation, Canada's largest engineering firm. Using existing tracks and platforms in Grand Central Terminal, the world's largest railway station, avoids the risk of placing as many as 8,000 Long Island Railroad passengers in a deep cavern terminal, 151 feet below Park Avenue, in the event of fire or terrorist attack. Using the upper level saves passengers 3 to 4 minutes of travel time in each direction and saves the MTA substantial costs of operating and maintaining 47 escalators. A better plan would also include halting construction of a costly new yard for midday storage of rail cars in Sunnyside Yard. By operating more frequent reverse peak service and returning rail cars to existing yards further east, there would be no need to build a new yard. This property is worth much more if sold as raw real estate, since developers would not have to build a costly deck over an operating rail yard. Remaking the three commuter railroads serving the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut metropolitan area into a 21st century regional rail system with frequent service, integrated fares, and through running would better serve the region's changing demographics and transportation needs. My contact information is on the bottom of this, and I would urge anyone interested to please give a call or send an email. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Our next speaker is Orrin Getz.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. I have a handout, please. The handout is the schedules for the Raritan Valley line of New Jersey Transit. And what New Jersey Transit has done is they are now running through service on the Raritan Valley line, which is a non-electrified diesel-operated line, and they're running the trains into Penn Station. But because of not having time slots at rush hours, they're doing the service off-peak between the morning and evening rush hours and after evening rush hours as a way to provide some better service wherever they could to their riders in that area. And it's a novel approach, and I think the Long Island Railroad could look into it and possibly do something similar to some of the lines that it underserves, using their dual-mode locomotives and trains to get people into Penn Station and get some more discretionary riders. It's interesting. You can follow what New Jersey Transit is doing and think about it. Also, now that more New Jersey Transit trains with dual-mode locomotives are coming, it would be a great idea maybe to consider some through service of that equipment out onto Long Island. And that's why I also included information about MyTex. New Jersey Transit has successfully implemented that program, and it would be great if it was compatible with the Long Island Railroad and Metro North. We should have one system. On the highways we do. We have Easy Pass, and you can use it anywhere, but the railroads don't seem to have that. That's the way we should go. We should have an integrated electronic fare system, and all the railroads should combine to use the same system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Orrin. Our final speaker is Murray Bowden.
Morning. Last time I was in the Bronx Botanical Gardens, all I could hear was the train whistles blowing, woo, woo. I live in Hartsdale and I hear train whistles going, woo, woo. The cars today are soundproof. They can't hear the woo, woo. So why are you blowing it? There was a discussion, Mike talked about putting police cars in Chappaqua and various other places to warn people about the gates coming down. But the lights you have there are exactly the same lights you had 65 years ago. They've never been upgraded. the city of New York on the Major Deegan Expressway, changing all the lights to LEDs. Passed it the other night. New, never saw that before. Whose responsibility is to say that the lights at railroad crossings are outdated and need to be changed? Nobody takes that responsibility. Nobody takes the responsibility to say, we can't hear the train horn inside the car, so why are you blowing a train horn? I asked the question before, I ask it again. Are you interested in safety, or are you interested in doing it the way you did it 65 years ago? I'd like to meet with somebody from Long Island Railroad to discuss this and to point out how easy it is to upgrade and get permission to upgrade. But nobody responds. I get to stand up here week after week, month after month, and say, you talk about safety? You talk about putting police cars to make people pay attention to something that doesn't really matter? Long Island, out in Suffolk County, in East Hampton, they have 6 railroad crossings. So when a train blows the horn, nobody knows for which of the 6 crossings it's meant for. So why are you doing it? Can't stop. Safety requires you to think about what the driver needs to know. Tell the driver what he needs to know, and don't blow the horn where it makes no difference and only annoys the people at 125th Street. Whose responsibility is it anyhow?
Thank you very much. That completes our public comment period. On page 4 of the minutes of the February meeting, do I have any changes to the minutes? If not, motion to approve. Second, all in favor? There is no change to the work plan, I don't believe. And we'll go into the President's report. Substituting for Pat today is Dave Kubicek, the Senior Vice President for Operations. Dave?
Thank you, Chair Pally. Our first order of business, we would like to bring forward Marissa Malola and also Bob Murphy. We are going to be receiving a TSA award. She is the Regional Director for Zone 1. Just a little bit of background on this. I don't want to steal her thunder on this award, but basically this was a review throughout the United States. Long Island Railroad was one of the properties that was selected to receive such an honorable award, and I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kubicek, and good morning, everybody. On behalf of our TSA Acting Administrator, Mel Caraway, I would like to thank you all for the opportunity to publicly recognize the good work everyone at the Long Island Railroad is doing to secure transportation in and around the nation's capital. To get things started, I'd like to recognize and acknowledge Vice President of Operations, David Kubicek, MTA Director of Security, Raymond Diaz, MTA Police Chief Michael Cohn, and Commanding Officer Chief Thomas Odessa for the Eastern and Southern regions. Thank you for your leadership and making transit security a top priority within your organization. You not only serve the needs of business, carrying commuters to and from their jobs, but you also connect friends and loved ones at a more personal level, understanding that family business is just as important as the men, women, and children who board your trains each day. To the Long Island Railroad Chief of Security Systems and Services, Mr. Robert Murphy, for championing a vision and succeeding in enhancing the Long Island Railroad security posture for your customers, fellow employees, and business partners. To the Assistant Deputy Federal Security Director, James Fitzgerald, Lead Inspectors Stephen Collins, and Inspectors Philip Salmon and Vincent Van Leuven for your collaborative efforts in working with local, state, and federal partners in building and sustaining a partnership necessary to provide the highest level of transportation as security as possible. I'd like to also express my sincere gratitude to the folks who are the boots on the ground. They deserve much of the credit for the hard work and dedicated efforts in making our vision and security excellence a reality. All of you are being honored for the TSA's highest ranking, that of Gold Standard. for the work you have done in 2014 to strengthen transportation security for hundreds of thousands of people who depend on the Long Island Railroad each and every day. The amount of work and the quality of effort required to attain this ranking is high, and I commend the Long Island Railroad and the MTA Police for your foresight, and a sincere congratulations to the employees of both agencies for working together to lift your agency to the level of this recognition. It takes much hard work and dedication to achieve excellence, as you successfully proven back in 2010, when you first received the Gold Standard Award. But to sustain that level of effort, you have demonstrated a very high degree of perseverance and commitment. And for this, we in TSA are very grateful for all that you have done to keep the Long Island Railroad system safe and secure. The TSA is recognizing 5 rail and mass transit agencies throughout the nation for their dedication to building a strong security program for earning TSA's highest rating of the gold standard. On the agency's most recent baseline assessment of security enhancement, also known as BASE. The BASE public outreach efforts and background check programs. The BASE assessment analyzes the security program for each transit system and identifies vulnerabilities that are addressed. The BASE program was developed to increase domain awareness, enhance prevention and protection capabilities, and further response preparedness of transit systems such as the Long Island Railroad nationwide. BASE is aimed at meeting the requirements in the 9/11 Commission Act Security Assessment Section, which directs TSA to identify critical assets, infrastructure, and systems and their vulnerabilities, and insists bus and public transportation authorities to address their security programs. TSA's Acting Administrator Melvin Caraway commends the Long Island Railroad in his letter to the President Nowakowski, and I quote, "For the commitment and hard work that this level of achievement requires, and I wish you success in maintaining the high standards of security you have demonstrated." I am pleased to ask Director Diaz, Chiefs Cohen and Odessa, AFSC, Jim Fitzgerald, Ron Marciano from our headquarters division to join me in presenting an award to Vice President Kubitschek on behalf of the men and women of the MTA and the Long Island Railroad.
On behalf of the chairman of the MTA, Tom Prendergast, and all the board members, we thank the TSA for recognizing the exemplary work which our MTA, police, and Long Island Railroad personnel do on security and safety every day It is at one of the forefronts of all of our goals to make sure that people get to and from where they want to go on the railroad safely and securely, and we thank all of our personnel and our police department for all of their great work, and we thank the TSA for recognizing it and recognizing the people who do such a great job for us. So thank you again. Dave?
Okay, thank you, Chair Talley. Thank you, Chair Talley. Just for clarifications for when we asked about work plan, on the ESA readiness projects update, that's been postponed to a later date to coincide with the CPOC presentation.
Okay.
And then the third quarter diversity EEO report has been moved at the request of the diversity committee to December.
Okay,
Just
fine.
for clarifications on that.
No problem.
Okay, for my remarks, St. Patrick's Day Parade, preliminary numbers compared to 2014 to 2015, we've moved approximately 18,000 people more, so that was good. Had a few more people out on the system utilizing our services. I'd like to bring up two items for clarifications to the committee because of their timing. They have to do with closures and impact to our service. One is a Colonial Road closure. It's a $45 million project. It began in February of 2015. The bridge, though, will start being closed for March 30th, 2015, and it is scheduled to come back online about March of 2016. There's been numerous notifications, letters, documents, and everything else that have went out on this. There's been presentation materials around this, but I just wanted to bring this as a reminder to the committee that this was coming on in a few days. The other one will be the Ellison Avenue Bridge project. This is a $17.5 million project. The bridge is going to be closed for 1 year, from April 13th of 2015 to April 2016. We're going to have a major demolition effort. So basically, train service between Hicksville and Mineola will be halted while we do this demolition. The bus service plan that's implemented is something similar that's been practiced here previously. We're reaching out to all local cities, towns, communities, so there's a lot of prep work and stuff that's taken place. But I just wanted to make sure that this was brought to y'all's attention, sooner than later, of the magnitude of what's taken place here. The other thing, the exact weekend that we see where we're going to have a shutdown is May 16th and 17th, and that's pretty much a demolition effort to clean everything out, at least the superstructure. There will probably be another outage in the fall of 2015 for us to go back in and reinstall some of the larger materials that we just can't construct in between service hours. But that'll be another outreach effort that's going to be put out there. But like I said, just for clarification to make sure everybody was aware of this was upcoming based off of its timing. Would just like to kind of point out also on our, it'll be talked, and it's noted in some of our materials, we're very excited about the confidential close call reporting program. On March 6th, all parties, with the FRA, the labor organizations, Long Island Railroad, we signed this. According to the FRA, this is the biggest rail property participating in the program with all crafts and everything else from day one. Our next major step is March 29th, whenever we're having our, I guess you could say, when we truly undertake this Herculean effort. Very, very excited about it, but kudos to all of the staff, Lori, and all the operations folks that have been supporting this program to get it at this point in time. Just from a safety perspective, I just wanted to kind of footnote also another major project that's kind of moving in the right direction is we had on our CCTV, which closed circuit television, which begins the process for us installing this on the current rolling stock that we have here. Meeting was held in early March, and we're looking to have a notice to proceed to the vendor. That's going to be another component to the railroad that's going to be a little bit different than what we've had here before. A lot of focus has been great on the platforms and the stations and stuff, but now with us adding these additional tools and resources to our rolling stock, there's some other components and lessons learned that we probably can work with that. That'll be a several-year effort modifying everything, but I just wanted to footnote that. And that concludes my remarks for now.
Any questions on any of those items? If not, okay. MTA Capital Construction, Anthony D'Amico is substituting for Michael.
Yeah, Bill Goodrich will be giving a little presentation on the site access report. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tony. First, I want to go over one safety item as part of my report before I go into the report that starts on page 16 of the committee book. We did have 3 separate personal injury incidents which occurred on one of our Manhattan contracts, which is one of our major contracts in Manhattan, CMO 05. Michael's Corporation is the contractor. It did require injured parties to be transported to area hospitals. As a result of these incidents, a safety stand-down and comprehensive review was undertaken by safety personnel and management, both from Capital Construction and the contractor. The 3 incidents briefly were as follows. The first incident occurred on February 27th. In this incident, a construction worker was struck by falling pneumatically applied concrete. The worker had entered an area that had been sprayed earlier in the shift, and preliminary indications show that the worker had begun to finish the surface before it had reached sufficient initial strength. As a result of that, a section of the fresh concrete separated from the wall and struck the worker, sending him into some scaffolding he was working off of. He was taken to MedCorps, which is our on-site first aid facility, but he was then transported by ambulance to the hospital. As a result of this incident, all of our pneumatically applied concrete operations were shut down on 4 different contracts, and the reason it was suspended on all 4 contracts was that the same subcontractor is involved with all 4 contracts. We have conditionally approved them to resume work at this point, and that was only after the contractors were required to submit revised plans, work plans, safety plans, quality plans to address additional measures to prevent this type of incident from reoccurring. The second incident occurred on March 3rd. In this incident, a construction worker received lacerations to several fingers while operating a circular saw. As a result of that, MTACC safety staff, along with the contractor staff, inspected all small hand tools on the contract, and a number of power tools were removed from service for safety issues, need for preventative maintenance, and excessive wear. A third incident occurred on March 11th. In this incident, a worker's knee was injured, requiring surgery when he stepped through and fell from a top mat of rebar. He fell through the top mat of rebar. The incident is still under investigation by the contractor, as the worker did not report his injury until the following day. The safety personnel have reinforced the importance and the requirement for protective board walking surface to be installed on the rebar mat, so there's a safe surface for all employees working on or in the vicinity of the rebar mats. As far as other progress in the project update, which is in the committee book, I just want to highlight a few items. Out in Herald, as part of our work on the 12 kV feeder system, we did succeed in completing the S feeder work, which is the primary feeder for the 12 kV system. We completed that in the end of February, and Our contractor has now started to demolish some of the existing S-feeder system. This is going to open up a large area in the Herald for construction work. With its companion contract, CH53, who's working on the C-feeder system, which is related to the 12 kV as well. We're planning on doing the cutover for the C3 feeder at the beginning of April, and the other 2 feeders, it's a 3-feeder system, will be cut over by the end of April, which would complete the work on the 12 kV system. Additionally, our CH57A contract, he has now resumed pile installations for the west approach of the westbound bypass. That was previously held up because of some signal cases that needed to be decommissioned. That work was completed in late February, so that work has now resumed. And finally, our last major procurement in Manhattan, which is our CM007 contract. We had a pre-proposal conference on March 5th and a site tour on March 6th with prospective proposers, and it was well attended by the construction community. And that concludes my report.
Any questions on capital? Ira?
Yeah, regarding safety, I've raised this a number of times, safety on the job on the east, on all the, whatever work is done on East Side Access, but anywhere in the MTA. But when we let a contract, I assume there's a safety plan submitted by the contractor as part of the bid. And are safety stand-downs part of what they do regularly?
There is a requirement for each of our contractors as part of their mobilization is to submit a health and safety plan for their operations, and that is reviewed and accepted before the contractor can proceed with the work. There are safety stand-downs that are not necessarily part of the plan. They do toolbox talks. They can have other safety talks that they'll have as part of their plan. Usually the safety stand-down, where we do it for the whole shift for our entire operation, is only done as a result of an incident.
The pneumatic cement, pneumatic concrete, I'm sorry. Is that commonly called shotcrete? Is that the same kind of thing, or is that that's the common name for it?
Yeah. Yes. The more common name is shotcrete. We use shotcrete for temporary applications, and the pneumatically applied concrete is a different term that is applied to the permanent work. The temporary work is shotcrete, and the pack is for permanent work. It is a different concrete mix, different admixtures, and it is a different application.
Wasn't there a previous incident, I forgot, whether it was a couple of years ago, regarding shotcrete? I think it was a death. I'm just curious as to what you would think after that. The contractors would have a heightened view of this, and something like this would not have happened. I'm just, I'm wondering about it.
Well, your memory is correct. There was a fatality a few years ago with a shotcrete application as a result of some layers overhead coming free and striking a worker. This was a different application. This really was a wall area, and it was in a tunnel, so it was the vertical part of the wall as well as where the wall began to curve into the arch, and it was part of the curvature that area came free and struck the individual in the shoulder.
Question, isn't shotcrete basically the way that the concrete is applied? I know there are different mixtures to get it to shoot through and get adhered to a surface or whatever, but Also, too, it depends on the amount of rebar and wire that you put in that and how the mix is made as to whether or not it's permanent or not. Sometimes it's stabilization for embankments and stuff, and it stays in place. But isn't it just really how it's applied? It's shot through the air, basically, to stick on a surface that's not formed out as normal concrete would be?
That's correct. A lot of our applications in the tunnel and cavern now
Right.
are without formwork, and they do initial layers. There is reinforcing steel. They do initial layers, which we call scratch coat, as sub-layers. This final layer was about 4 to 5 inches thick and was being applied in the wall area and the curvature of the arch. And it's becoming more prevalent to utilize that type of placement as opposed to the formwork and the cast in place.
Thank you.
One more question. The issue here, we believe, is that it just wasn't allowed to set? It wasn't given enough time to set?
Yes, it appears from the investigation that the worker prematurely tried to start finishing the surface before it had a chance to take enough of an initial set.
Any other questions? Any other questions? If not, Chief, police report?
Good morning. Year-to-date in Long Island Railroad, we're down 19 compared to 23 incidents last year, down 17%. Unfortunately, February, we were going against a very low number from last year. We had 9 incidents this year compared to 6 last year. 2 of those were robberies, 1 in East New York and 1 in Jamaica. Both of those cases are still open. We had 5 larcenies compared to 3. We had 2 in Babylon, 1 in Hillside, and 2 in Penn Station. And also in Long Island Railroad, we're continuing our grade crossing enforcement. We've issued 149 summonses year-to-date at various crossings. If there's any questions?
Chief, how would that compare to previous years?
I don't have last year's numbers in front of me right now, but the last comparison I had were slightly above this year in issuing summonses.
Okay. Any questions of the chief? Okay. Information items, Dave?
Okay, a quick overview. We've got 3 items. Strategic investment planning report. The focus of this, again, remains on state of good repair and safety initiative efforts. Also, just like to kind of footnote inside this document, also talks about enterprise asset management. That's one of the things that's a big initiative here at the agency in all lines of business for us to make sure that we're able to capture this and be able to monitor the overall status of the investments where we're putting at. Track work program schedule change. It pretty much supports our work plan that we've outlined. Annual elevator and escalator report. For the 4th quarter, we are seeing some favorable trending in our performance overall. And with that, we're open for questions.
Questions on any of those 3 reports? Ira?
On the safety section, it mentioned the close call reporting system. I would just want to congratulate you on finally signing the agreement, and I look forward to what happens with that. And one of the things I had emailed about last month was railroad crossing incidents, because I think there's a number of, because you see them on the alerts. There was an unauthorized vehicle on the tracks or something like that, and I don't know how we track them or if we do, and whether our employees report to see what happened and to see how to, if that we could generate some data or even incident by incident to determine how we can prevent that. Because I assume when you see unauthorized car on the tracks and that's the end of that, it would cause delays, and you see no newspaper report, I assume there was no collision. So I don't think that's an FRA reportable incident, as I understand it, but I'm just wondering how we track them.
We track incidents through the pages that we get, and also we look at the log from the day before. We usually send out, if safety staff hasn't already responded just by the nature of the event, we send out staff to do an assessment of the crossing in collaboration with the engineering department to see if there's other measures, maybe some type of bollards or some types of things that can be put in place to be able to help mitigate that from happening again in the future. So we do look at each incident, and then we look at the surrounding area to see if there's things that could be done to enhance the,
Do we have statistics on how often that happens, and there's been no, outside the?
right. We can certainly put those together and get those to
I'd
you.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
It just,
no, absolutely.
from a delay perspective, it seemed like a lot. But even from a safety perspective, I would
absolutely.
think you could,
I think it would be,
Yeah, we can
I think
do
it would
that.
be very helpful, I'm sure you have the materials
Yes.
in relation to not only how many, but where they occur. Are there numerous occasions where it occurs at the same location or whatever? I know obviously the safety committee is now undertaking a thorough examination of all the grade crossing issues relating to both railroads, and not only automobiles, but pedestrians. In many of our communities, pedestrians are at crossing the tracks in many of our, especially our downtown communities, and the safety committee is looking at all of those aspects. But whatever information you may have where luckily there is no accident, but there obviously is a situation that should not occur in that regard.
Yes, and when we analyze and evaluate each situation, in addition to, obviously you want to engineer out if there's a possibility of, the engineering department working with us to do that. But then we also ramp up on the enforcement end, and we have our tracks program, so we'll go out and target communities that there seems to be, prevalence of incidents at a particular crossing.
Right.
So we take a multifaceted approach to it.
but I
because
mean,
it's,
even, I'm sure there are incidents that where people are crossing the tracks, not, a lot of incidents when nothing happens, and maybe an engineer even sees it, and I don't know if they're encouraged to report. I saw,
yeah, actually, the
and
engineers.
nothing happened,
Right.
he saw them and he kept going because there was no one on,
No, the engineers obviously are tremendously impacted by this, and they do have a mechanism where they do report to our 204 so that we can keep track of that as well.
Okay.
Because the more information that we have, the better position we are to be able to address those areas.
And if I could also note, that's why I kind of reference like the CCTV on the rolling stock, because it's just another tool or feature that we're going to have at our disposal, because we're going to have forward-facing cameras going through these intersections. So not only will it just be kind of like a verbal report, you can hear what's taking place, but we'll, depend upon when the event happens, but we'll be able to capture some of this information as well to add it to all the other efforts that are being focused on this area of grade crossings as a whole.
Thank you. I have another,
Go ahead, Ira.
on some of the in the strategic investments, there's no, I mean, some of the, especially the projects that are being completed later, but particularly second track, it doesn't give, and I'm sure I could find it on the website, completion dates for those projects. And then, it'd be good to put that in the next one. Also, for East River Tunnel track rehabilitation, it says $28 million. Now, that's our cost, and an Amtrak, I assume, there's another, I don't know how that's, I'm just wondering how that's divided up.
That's an allocated cost for the four tunnels. Each tunnel has its own allocation. We pay 100% for 3 and 4, and about 30-some% for 1 and 2 track. And so Amtrak is doing track total renewal with the drainage system, and that's our share. Right now, they're in line 4 and 3, so it is 100% our cost.
Oh, so it'd be good to see what Amtrak's amount is. It's a total, and right now, our cost is $28 million,
Correct.
right, for this under track. It'd be good if someone could get me what's Amtrak, what's the cost of the whole project, and what's the Amtrak. I don't need the breakdown of what each tunnel is, but it'd be good just to see the totals, if you could get that for me. And, I mean, the same thing also, you have the Superstorm Sandy, we have the 68.6 million, it's number 10. Is that 28 million part of that, or is this an additional amount?
No, this is nothing to do with Sandy for the East River Tunnel.
This is separate from the other
This is
one in
totally
number
separate.
10, right? But no, but this, under number 10, it says Superstorm Sandy, but it mentions, so the 68.6 under Superstorm Sandy money is our money that we're to do Superstorm Sandy remediation. So some of it's even, protecting the tunnels and things like that, separate from that other amount.
That's correct.
And but there's also Amtrak money involved there as well.
There's Amtrak's money, two separate things, again. For the tunnel track replacement, it's based on those percentages to bring the track up into a state of good repair. Then we have Sandy, which we have some money for protection going into the East River tunnels from water infiltration from the West Side Yard and also from Long Island City area. And that's the Sandy part. And that's the only amount of monies that we have right now for Sandy. There was you probably saw for a high-density signal system, that's still pending. That's not awarded. Amtrak is going underneath their insurance claim for Sandy money right now,
Okay.
and that has not yet been awarded to them.
Oh, so we don't know yet what,
They don't know yet, correct.
but there's a cost they're going to have to put in.
Well,
I mean,
they're-
Amtrak's, regardless of whether they get the insurance proceeds, Amtrak's going to have to somehow find this money. These tunnels are not just important for us, and Amtrak has responsibility, so I assume they must have an idea
well, they have the idea based on
of what they're going to have
the
to.
insurance. You know? I mean, that's
Well,
their,
but no,
their
but they-
cost. Their cost is based on their insurance claim, what they think their cost is. For total, they're going for total renewal
Right.
in the area that the tunnels were infiltrated by water.
Yep.
That's line 1 and 2,
But if they don't get the funds for line, if they don't get the funds from insurance,
correct.
what are they going to, what's their
If
plan?
they didn't get
their
the
plan
funds,
B?
well, their plan B would be in concert with us. What would actually have to be done? Because if they stayed with total renewal, they would be coming to us at that point for lines 1 and 2, to put in our 30-some% of our cost allocation.
Oh, I see, okay, all right. Okay. And on just on network strategy, the network strategy study and and it would be interesting to see where that's headed. I know this whether there's specifically, we're looking at Queens, same thing with Penn Station capacity utilization, whether we're looking at increased ridership from Queens and how we divide. I mean, there's an Elmer station already in the capital plan, so it mentions.
I can tell you we're looking at Suffolk County.
That's good.
I agree.
I think it's very good. Okay. Anyway, but maybe that's for another time, a separate briefing. Okay. I think that's it.
Okay. Any other questions on any of those items? Okay, if not, we have one action item on page 54. One of Ira's favorite things, agreements with Amtrak. One of mine also. Dave?
Okay, just a few high-level items, and we'll open it up for discussion. Basically, it's replacing an existing piece of equipment at West Side Yard. The piece of equipment is 1983. So since there's a renewal effort there, upgrading it, we're going from a single axle wheel truing device to basically it's a wheel lathe that does 2 axles at the same point in time. So the advantage of this naturally is because speed, we're doing things twice as fast with the same amount of equipment stuff that's in there. Also, we get better tolerances, better finishes as these rolling stock require tighter and tighter tolerances for the performance. The other item I'd also like to add up is that this machine is very similar, if not exact, to what Metro North already has. So we're buying equipment that's consistent between railroads as well. And with that, I'm open for questions.
Any questions on this item? If not, motion to approve. Second? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Procurements.
Okay.
Good morning. There are 3 procurements, all competitive in this month's package, totaling $462,032. There are no competitive procurements and no items in the ratification section. The first item in the competitive section is a request for MTA Board approval to award a 3-year competitively bid miscellaneous service contract in the amount of $22,032 to Metro Weather Service, Inc. to provide current and comprehensive meteorological information services to the Long Island Railroad. Under this contract, Metro Weather will send current detailed weather forecasts, updates, and alerts to 7 railroad locations every 4 hours, 24 hours per day, every day of the year, and provide unlimited 24-hour telephone support. This IFB was advertised, Metro Weather's prices are based on fixed monthly billing rates and is 200, their prices are 252% less than the next lowest bidder and are considered to be fair and reasonable. Funding for this contract is included in Long Island Railroad's operating budget, excuse me. The second item is a request for MTA Board approval to write a competitively bid miscellaneous service contract, New York State OGS contract with United Parcel Service. Under this contract, UPS will provide domestic and international small package delivery service for a period of 15 months through the March 2016 in the not-to-exceed amount of $80,000. Again, funding for this contract is included in the railroad's operating budget. The last item is a request by Long Island Railroad for board approval to issue a contract modification in the amount of $360,000 to Go Green Environmental Services to allow for the continued pumping and lawful disposal of waste from cesspools and sewers at various railroad stations and for vector and jetting services needed for upcoming tunnel cleaning. The additional funding will cover services through the original contract term, which expires in November of this year. Funding is included in Long Island Railroad's operating budget. That concludes the report, and I ask for a vote on these competitive procurements.
Any questions on any of these three items? Ira?
On the Go Green contract, it says that the high volume at Shea Stadium in Ronkonkoma was underestimated. Was that just an error, or is this something happened?
No, when we initiated the contract, we estimated what we thought the volume were going to be in those two locations, and we've exceeded that. So these funds will cover those additional quantities.
Okay. And we don't think something's going on at those places that's causing this excess?
No.
Okay, okay. Also, we're not calling that station Shea Stadium anymore, are we?
That's correct. We'll make that change.
Because it says Shea Stadium in this thing.
Unless somebody wants to pay for it. And I assume on the Metro Weather one, they did not take our request to actually change the weather, only to report on the weather that is coming, notwithstanding our good efforts.
For an extra fee, they'd be more than happy.
I'd like to see what that fee is in that regard.
You and I can't afford
Yes,
it.
I understand. Neither could we all together, unfortunately. Any other changes? If not, motion to approve. Second, all in favor? Okay. Capital Construction.
Good morning. Capital Construction's procurement package this month has one item. The item can be found on page 69 of the committee book. There are no non-competitive or competitive items. There is one ratification item. The ratification is requesting approval of a modification to the Eastside Access Project's general engineering consultant contract for additional design services to address changes to signal and supervisory control equipment. The modification totals $1,197,544. The item is submitted for your consideration and vote.
Any questions on this item? Go ahead.
Yeah, it says that this is being done because of the requirement for civil speed restrictions on the Long Island Railroad. When this is done, PTC will already have been implemented in this area as well, I assume. So my question is, and maybe I can answer myself, I just want to be sure, PTC does not involve civil speed restriction? It's just it just prevents collisions? Is there someone here who knows that about signals? They can answer me later, but I'm just it seems like we're putting in civil speed restrictions in a part of the system that when it's finally operational, there'll be positive train control. And I'm sure this is necessary, but I want to make sure this is absolutely necessary, that we need to do the civil speed restrictions if we're going to have PTC.
Well, PTC will give us civil speed restrictions when it's implemented, which I believe the date's going to probably be around 2017, 2018 maybe, and this would be the interim step.
Okay, but this is for the East Side Access Project. Is it for other track that's not in the East Side Access Project, or that's just Harold interlocking?
Well, I'd have to get back to you, but I believe this is in Harold Interlochen. It's the approach into Harold Interlochen
Right.
and Harold
The way
Interlochen.
I'm reading this is this PTC will come when PTC comes.
Right.
Until PTC comes,
Yeah,
this is necessary on lines that the Long Island Railroad continues to use in Harold Interlocking to make it safer while the construction of East Side Access is going on. That's how I'm reading this.
Yes, correct. Yes.
That's, okay, I sort of had to interpret that because it is and it's part of East Side Access, so, but it covers more than, it covers currently operating track.
Yes.
I would assume.
That's how I would.
So East Side Access is putting signals in, but in lieu of PTC coming there, this is the interim, so you
Right,
don't have
okay.
a gap period where
Okay.
you, civil speed restriction, there'll be something there instead of nothing, so that's why.
And we, okay, trains, okay.
Right, because trains run concurrently, both trains that are in operation.
They run through there, we're putting in signals, and the question is, you're going to have a time period without any kind of PTC protection. Civil speed restriction is an interim.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
thanks.
and more particularly, do you mean that the speed restrictions, as I understand it, will remain in place even when PTC comes? They'll just be automated.
Right, it's just, to do this, there is a lot of, I mean, signals are a complicated thing, but there's a lot of programming and things that need to be done in order to have these kind of protections, and so you have to do it via change orders and changes in design. So you could go 2 or 3 year period without these protections and wait for PTC to come. Decided by our chairman, they did not want to do that, and we would do whatever we could with civil speed restriction to take care of that.
And rightly so.
It does not cover the tunnels to Underground Central, it does not tunnel
No.
the approach tunnels at all, it doesn't need to, okay.
No, this
But
is
it didn't
strict.
say, it didn't make,
So whatever we're doing in East Side Access and how now,
We will
we're
not-
doing
we don't
signals,
need to do- right.
upgrading them, and we're taking these precautions in the meantime
Right,
to
for
make
the-
sure there is protections once they come into.
right, but this current, East Side Access is not open, and it won't open until after PTC is in place. So there's no reason to add this civil speed restriction type of stuff to the signal system. PTC will be dealing with it in those portions of the system.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure, okay,
The new portion going into Grand Central Terminal will have the benefit of positive train control.
Okay, any other questions on this item? If not, a motion to approve. Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Monthly operating reports.
Okay, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about, naturally our on-time performance and some of the discussions before with Metro North at the previous committee. Just some little bit of background, at least especially on my part. My staff told me I picked an excellent time to come here to really witness a great winter. Very severe, very challenging. One of the things that was interesting here was we had snow that was very fine, very just brutally, it was almost like sandpaper. We had a lot more icing up here than what I would have suspected, and also, just regular heavy-duty, wet snow. So as we went through the summer, as we went through the winter period, first of all, I think the staff, really put forth a great effort. Every year, though, we need to be reevaluating what we went through, why we're doing things the way that we were, and are there some valuable lessons learned, going forward. So some of the things that, for example, that we were doing along the way is that we have like ice scrapers on our rolling stock. With these ice events and stuff, there's basically a hardened product that we change out on the way that they collect off the third rail. It helps us keep the third rail collecting electricity to keep our electric trains moving. One of the things that we'll do next year is that we'll probably double the amount of vehicles equipped with these shoes and stuff. It just helps us keeping the rail, the third rail and stuff clear throughout these weather events. We're going to be looking at some prone areas where we have snow buildup, Cold Spring Harbor area, Port Washington area. We're going to look at the infrastructure to see if it can handle like maybe heat tape for third rail and stuff in certain areas. We don't have to do the whole alignment. I have to take it and evaluate, is the infrastructure readily available to put on there? But it's these hardening efforts that we need to move towards that just make it a little bit easier for us in handling these winter events. Just kind of a quick overview. The other thing was we averaged 24 degrees. So basically, where previous times, whenever you have winter, and you're relying on thawing, we really never came out of a thaw period. So basically, that's another thing that we'll look at with our heaters and some of our alcohol trains and everything else that we were running and using. Maybe we harden them a little bit so we know that they're running them a lot more frequently. Pretty much when we're running the railroad, we need to be having equipment and stuff clearing through areas every 30 minutes to 45 minutes. If not, this stuff is just going to freeze over. Sometimes it happens faster than that, and that's why we have to attack this in layers. Also, I've asked our government relations folks as well. Typically, I start my winter prep efforts in July, right after the 4th of July. It gives us time to go through the reports, make sure that we work with procurement and stuff to have all our materials and stuff in place. But we'll be reaching out to the local jurisdictions and towns of some areas about how to clean platforms, who's the actual owner. That's one of the things that's very challenging here with all the different jurisdictions and towns and such, to make sure as we're cleaning the platform, we kind of have an idea of where we should be cleaning at, how we address that, but then also who's the counterpart that if we see something and vice versa. That's something that we're going to be doing a specific outreach on that throughout. The other thing that I would just also kind of like to put out there as well is just customer communications as a whole. One of the things just to let y'all know is that whenever we have these major weather events, we're standing up at our incident command center. So basically you'll have police, emergency, all the crafts and disciplines, and also a customer service component. We want to make sure that we take a little bit better advantage of that this coming year, where I think through this outreach of the government side, learning with the towns and everything else with our messaging and stuff, if there's things that we can tap into that are maybe localized with the town or the region or whatever, as we're putting out our information and stuff, those are the type of things that I'm asking staff to kind of look and work at as well. And for that right there, that's kind of our lessons learned and our path going forward. The rest of the reports, since we're pretty close on time, we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
I would just hope in that weather report, because I've gotten a number of questions. I was going to use that word. I'll use that word. It's a much better word than the actual things I got from some of the local municipalities. But if we could add sidewalks to and from the stations and parking lots in that analysis for next winter, since we're obviously not going to be able to change the weather, we have to be able to use it in that context. But those were two other locations or types of issues that were relayed to me from some of the local municipalities. Not so much a question, sometimes it's a question of whose jurisdiction is it?
Absolutely.
Because as we know on Long Island, you go 20 feet, you go through 20 different jurisdictions, especially near the train stations, from historical avenues as to who owned what. So it's not only a question of who owns it, who may be responsible for its operations and maintenance and safety, especially during those periods of time. So, as I said, I would urge we add the sidewalks and the parking lots to that analysis.
That'll
also
be all part of that outreach. So
Thank you.
What we'll be looking for is physical walkthroughs.
Right.
That's the other component that I'd like to just add, is it's not just about over the phone or looking at such a drawing or whatever. Our expectation is to have some type of walkthrough so we kind of identify these areas. And then also take advantage of the technology, because our supervisors have phones, their folks have phones. It doesn't take no time to snap a picture, send it to the respective, individuals as we're working through night and stuff, and to be able to layer that information and stuff, back and forth as we work through things. Yes.
And there's also a difference between who does the work and who pays for the work. Those are two different things, especially with our local municipalities. Sometimes they're more than willing to do it. They just want to know they're going to get reimbursed, assuming it's our responsibility, and vice versa. There may be situations where we do the work for them in situations where things come together. So, as I said, that jurisdictional issue is of great importance to many of us.
Yeah.
Jonathan?
Thank you, Mitch. The purpose of this comment is not to beat up, because what happened, happened. And you heard, I guess, the dialogue from the last meeting. But the notion that more than a quarter of the trains are late during the rush hour is something that has to be addressed. and I think we need to do an analysis of what went wrong. The weather is, you know, what the weather's going to be, as the chair aptly put it. We can't change that, but we have to run the railroad, and people have to get to work, to doctor appointments, and to things with a better record than having what we had without reciting that. It's pretty devastating for February and for most of the winter. So I think we need to figure out what we did wrong, because I can't imagine that we should just blame nature for all of this. Because if we do, there's no point to that. And we need to be ready for bad winters. Just pointing out that it was the worst February in whatever number of years, okay, it was. But we still have to get to work, and I just ask us to do a retrospective, and I look forward to hearing about it. And there's no need to, it's not intended to beat up or to reprimand. It's just to point out we really have to learn from it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I think both Jim and myself would, you know, at some point in the next couple of months, we should, from both railroads, have an analysis of what happened during the winter months, and what, if anything, can be provided for next winter in that regard, because having mistakes and having issues that come up is one thing, learning from them is a completely different issue, and I think both railroads are attempting to do that. The question is, do we need more resources? What do we need to accomplish that? And that's, part of that is our responsibility here at the board, and I would, you know, I'm sure Pat and the Metro North would both look in that context of providing the board with a report the next couple of months as to causes, effects, and solutions to the issues that arise.
Yeah, we can definitely be more specific on some of the things that we're going to be taking place. We recognize that we've got to do a better job at providing service to the customers in the region and stuff, and it's not single point in one specific area. We're going to have to attack this in layers of areas of the system, rolling stock, infrastructure, and how we prep and how we stage material. So it's something that we're doing. Long Island Railroad has a very lengthy snow plan here that everybody follows, but we just need to make sure that it moves as fast as possible. And it's something that we can support because we're going to be doing it anyhow.
Okay. Ira, do you had something else? I'm sorry.
Really, no, just thank you. Thank you for, I mean, the way you answered the question before I asked it, with what you plan to do in the future. I just, you know, the statistics speak for themselves. People's complaints speak for themselves. People rely on the railroad to get into Manhattan. They really don't have an alternate. I mean, in New York City, you can do that. I can do that. I can take something else. But that's been one of the, you know, you rely on this railroad alone to get into Manhattan. And we have to, you know we have to do better. But thank you. I see you're already ahead of the game in some ways. And I appreciate that. And from the rider appreciates that. Looking forward to a better winter, whatever the weather is. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns? If not, I thank you all. Motion to adjourn. So move. Second. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good job.
Oh, thank you very much.
Good job.
Do you need these materials for
No,
anything, or do
no.
we just submit those?
Yeah, usually they'll pick them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think